Good morning. Today I'm going to talk to you about the art books that got me where I am today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Gabby. I'm a professional full-time comics artist, which is crazy to me because that's been my dream since I was literally 4 years old. Previously, I have worked in animation, most notably at Walt Disney Animation Studios. I was there as a storyboard artist for about 2.5 years collectively. Now I make a living entirely off of my own comics through Patreon and social media, and that's brand new to me. That's still extremely exciting for me. So I wanted to talk to you about it so that you know how I got here. If you want to read my comics, by the way, I'll have them linked below. There'll be a bibliography at the end. And I have here a collection of those books that really changed my life and guided my artistic journey. So we'll start from the very beginning. Like I said, this has been my dream since I was 4. And that's because when I was 4, the very first art book that guided me on this path was the Sunday comics. Now, I would have brought a copy of the Sunday comics with me, but we don't get the newspaper anymore, and I bet you don't either. But do you know what the Sunday comics was? Like, if you're my age or older, you do. Gen Z, I'm not sure. The Sunday comics was that every Sunday you would get this big ass packet in the newspaper, like a super double extra super large newspaper. And in that you'd have a whole section of comics. It was probably a front page, a middle page, and then the back page. My favorite Sunday comics were Hagar the Horrible, Beetle Bailey, and I think Family Circus. I'll put pictures up so you know what I'm talking about. The ones I couldn't stand, Dilbert, Doonesbury, and they would reprint Spider-Man. I could not stand the superhero comics. They bothered me. And after that, I started to ask for the little page of comics, only a front and back page, every single day. So my dad would sit down to read the newspaper and I would go, please, the comics. I'd wake up early from school just to read the comics. So from the time that I was 4 until the time that I was 12 or so, every single day, and especially on Sundays, I would read the Sunday comic. So what actually happened from that is that my dream was to become the youngest ever syndicated comic strip artist. And I went so far as to draw little comic strips and cut them out and put them in an envelope. And I went so far as to address the envelope to the San Francisco Chronicle. And it was in my head, I must have been 11 at this time, that I was like, I'm gonna fucking do this. Now, my comics weren't good. They were ripoffs of other comics because I didn't know what I was doing yet. But the drive was there. That was my dream. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be the youngest ever syndicated comic strip artist. So that's the first book, The Sunday Funnies. Not really a book, but it counts. And here's number 2. The year is 1998. I'm 6 years old. We're in a grocery store, and my dad buys me one of these. This is an Archie Comics Pals and Gals Double Digest. Now, this is not the first one that I started with, but I did end up with dozens of these. Dozens and dozens of these. I somewhere have a shoebox full of all of my old comics. God, these are still good. I somewhere have a shoebox full of all of my old Archie comics, because what would happen was, after that first day, it was somewhere in October 1998, my dad took me and my older sibling to the grocery store because we were both kids. And as we were checking out, he, on a whim, just picked up 2 Archie comics, the same one so that we wouldn't fight. And he gave one to my sibling and one to me. And we wrote our names in them. And so that's how I know that was my first ever comic, because I had both my copy and my older sibling's copy with both names in them. Because what happened was, my older sibling liked the comic fine and probably kept on getting comics for 6 months, maybe a year, but I really liked the comics, and I kept on getting those comics for years and years afterwards, probably up until I was about 11 or 12. I would be a good kid all week, and then when it was time to go to the grocery store, I would help memorize the grocery list, help find everything, help put things in the cart, and I would stand right by my dad's side. I wouldn't ask for nothing, wouldn't touch nothing, wouldn't look at nothing. And then when we got to the checkout line, where those magazine stands were, those were where the comics were. And I would go, hey, Dad, can I get one of these? One of these old boys? And sometimes he would say yes. I was only allowed to get double digest because the single digest was more expensive by page. So my favorites were the Jughead double digest and the Betty and Veronica double digest. Pals and Gals was good too, but I didn't like Archie. Did not like Archie. He's not my favorite character. If you don't know Archie comics, sorry that I'm going in on Archie comics right now, but this is one of my great passions in the world. When they came out with Riverdale, you don't know how mad I was because I wanted to do Riverdale myself. A huge part of my brain is still stuck in Archie Comics land and will always be stuck in Archie Comics land. I have a comic that runs right now that's called Eleanor and Devin. It's based off of Archie Comics because what I got from Archie Comics was ensemble cast, teenagers, drama, and then also the format of 6-page comics with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and gag pages. Because Archie Comics, they go for about 6 pages, then they have a little puzzle that you can do, or a gag page, just a 1-page gag. And this is where I learned that 4-panel comics that I learned from comic strips earlier were not going to be my thing. That's kind of a short story. I didn't need to do books, but 6 pages was where it was at for me. Sometimes they would also do a little to be continued at the bottom, and they would run them for 12 pages. And I thought, now that's my shit. So I did rip off Archie Comics for a very, very, very long time. You could still argue that I am ripping off Archie Comics to this day. I later, when I was in film school at CalArts, I did meet a friend, Susanna, who worked at Archie Comics, and she told me, it's not that big a deal, dude. Why don't you just come work for us at Archie Comics? And I cried because I didn't want to, because it was so special to me that I couldn't quit film school to go do Archie Comics. What would I do with the rest of my life? So that's my experience with Archie Comics. Like I said, I still have a shoebox somewhere in this house with dozens and dozens and dozens of Archie Comics in it, because for years it was every single grocery trip. And then once those years were over, it was birthdays. I think the last Archie comic that I got as a present was I was probably 28. They're still good. Look, the thing is, you have to do a lot of imagining because the stories themselves tend not to be good. So sometime, if you're interested, I'll do a whole video on headcanons and fan fictions. I have in my head to this day, beat for beat, storyboarded out an entire Archie Comics AMV with Jughead and Betty set to the song A Little Less 16 Candles, A Little More Touch Me by Fall Out Boy. I made that up when I was 11, and I've perfected it over the years, and I'm scared to make it because then my life will be over. You understand. Okay, that's Archie Comics. Now we're moving on to number 3. So Sunday Comics was from when I was 4 until I was about 12, 13. And still to this day, if I can get my hand on the Sunday Comics, best believe I'm in that shit. And then Archie Comics was from about 6 years old until about 14, 15, 16, and to this day, I still read Archie Comics when I get my hands on them. Oh, a warning about Archie Comics. They have 2 black characters and they date each other. They just introduced a gay character recently. Most of the kids are white. There are racist caricatures of Asians in Archie Comics. Now, the comics have been running since about 1935. I'll put on the screen when the actual year was. So in that time, they have made a lot of ugly mistakes. There's also like Christianity ads sometimes in Archie Comics. So if you're going to go to your grocery store and pick up an Archie Comics double digest, be prepared for all of that. But sometime I'll make a whole separate video. We don't have time. Number 3. Now this is where it all gets real. This is where we really get into it. I was 9 years old. I was raised Catholic. That means that we had this thing every year called the parish festival. A parish, if you're not Catholic, is the church that you go to. Like your regular church, that's your parish. So we had the parish festival, which was the school that I went to and our adjoining church. So I went to Catholic school, would throw this weekend-long festival with carnival games, garage sales, clothing sales, the whole thing. And the point of it was to raise money for the church so that the church could keep going for the rest of the year. And you had to volunteer a certain amount of hours if you went to the school so that you were contributing to the church, to the parish, to the Catholic community. So there were carnival games that you could play. Sometime I'll talk about this too, because there was one family. This is San Francisco, so there were Chinese American families and Chinese parents who were from China. And one family didn't speak any English, but ran the most popular booth at the parish festival by far, because it was gambling. It was just gambling. They had 2 giant dice and a twirler thing, and they would twirl it and then stop the dice, and it was a game called Over, Under, Even. And if you were over, if you placed your bet on over, and the dice landed on over 7, you would get money. If it landed on 7, you'd get double money. And if it landed under and you had bet under, you would get money. And if you didn't win, you would lose all of your money. So you put down a quarter, 2 quarters, whatever. And kids really fucking gambled. We spent all day there sometimes. But anyways, we were down to our last quarters, me and my cousin Justin. Shout out to Justin for changing my life. But me and my cousin Justin were down to our last quarters. We were winding down for the day. We'd spent all day playing games, and we decided to go up to the garage sale just to see what's what. And when we were there was a 25-cent bin, because everything was about like a quarter or 50 cents at the most at this parish festival. So there was a 25-cent bin, and Justin went digging in it, and he pulled out, it wasn't this exact book, because this one is Yukon Ho. The one that Justin pulled out was The Essential Calvin and Hobbes. And I had never heard of Calvin and Hobbes in my life. And Justin went, "You don't know Calvin and Hobbes?" And he went digging back into the bucket and pulled out the indispensable Calvin and Hobbes. He said, "You take this one, I'm going to take this one, let's buy them." So I paid a quarter, I got the comic book, he paid his quarter and got his comic book, and we walked home up the street to my grandma's house. And we spent the whole afternoon eating spray cheese and reading Calvin and Hobbes. And that, to this day, is one of the best afternoons of my entire life. That fucking afternoon rewired my whole brain, because Calvin and Hobbes, if you've not read it, is a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece. From beginning to end, there is not a bad strip. Sometimes they get a little like fillery, but there's probably 10 fucking filler comic strips in the whole 10 years of comics. Watterson is a genius, and that's where I learned everything from, because after this one fateful afternoon, Justin and I swapped comics afterwards, and after that I went home and I asked my dad, who was an eBay wizard, I asked him to please buy me the rest of the Calvin and Hobbes. I didn't know how many there were, I just knew there had to be more. I asked him to please get me the rest. And over the course of the next 6 months, my dad would troll eBay, and if it was $1 or less, he would just buy me a Calvin and Hobbes books. So yes, I had duplicates. Yes, I had fucked up books. Yes, I had books with missing pages. But I read every single strip over the course of the next 6 months. And I don't mean just read. I mean, I would bring those shits over to Justin's house, and we would read comics all day. So I still have Calvin and Hobbes mostly memorized. My favorite bits: "Yeah, death to oatmeal. Ha ha ha. Have a drink, kid." And also, one of the best ones of all time, in my opinion: "Hey, Calvin, are we near a slaughterhouse, or did you just forget your deodorant again? Drop dead, Susie. I hear your mom puts a paper bag over your face before she kisses you goodnight." Look, if you've not read Calvin and Hobbes, I hope that was enough of an ad for you to go and read Calvin and Hobbes. I became obsessed. Like I said, I still have them memorized to this day. I still go back and read them. When I worked at Disney, we got $150 for books, like art books, to spend. Best believe I spent that $150 on the entire Calvin and Hobbes discography. Yes, I did. That's my secret. As a storyboard artist, as an artist in general, as a comic book artist, I study Watterson. If you want recommendations, Yukon Ho is amazing. Watterson starts out with a little poem in the anthology books, and the poem at the beginning of this one is really good. He's actually a really good poet. I also recommend Something Under the Bed is Drooling. It's told from the point of view of a 6-year-old boy named Calvin. You've probably seen the decals of him peeing on cars and stuff like that. That's unsanctioned merch. Watterson never approved any merch of his characters. So any merch that you see of Calvin or Hobbes is illegal. And that man is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. When I found out that Watterson is worth hundreds of millions of dollars as a comic strip artist, and he never sold out, never merchandised his characters, never gave anyone the rights to Calvin and Hobbes, and he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, that's when it was over for me. That's when my parents' dreams of me being a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, out the window. That's it. I could make money from doing comics. Bro, why would I ever do anything else? So Something Under the Bed is Drooling is all of the monster comics from Calvin and Hobbes. If you want a masterclass in art, Calvin and Hobbes, The Sunday Pages. After a while, his comics were so good that they broke the panel format for Watterson, and he didn't have to draw panels anymore. He could just draw whatever he wanted. That's how good he was. And he would leave an entire space in the Sunday comics as he was publishing for him to just do whatever the fuck he wanted. That's so boss moves. Whatever. I could talk about Watterson forever. If you are interested in learning the way that I learned, The book that I recommend for you the most is this one. You'll see the pages are falling out. It's been read 1 billion times. It's called the 10th Anniversary book. In this book, he talks about his process. So on the right side of the page, there will be a comic, and on the left side of the page, Watterson talks about the comic. Look, I'm not going to hold this up and show you pieces of it because my book's fucked up. But I highly, highly recommend the 10th Anniversary book if you're interested in Calvin and Hobbes, if you're interested in becoming a comics artist, if you're interested in comics or comics history at all. 10th Anniversary book is amazing because Watterson talks about his thought process in creating the characters, in introducing the characters, and as the years go by, his approach to other adults in the comics and why he couldn't have them. If you're a fan of Calvin and Hobbes, there is a very notable series of weeklies that ran where Calvin finds a baby raccoon and rescues it because the baby raccoon is badly hurt and the baby raccoon dies. It's called the Baby Raccoon arc. And in that series of weekly comics, Watterson expertly talks about death through the eyes of a 6-year-old, and then also comforts that 6-year-old through the voices of Calvin's parents. And so for anybody who was reading Calvin and Hobbes at that time and managed to catch the weekly comics, that was a very affecting experience. Because kids read comics and adults read comics. And so to see Calvin struggling with death helped a lot of people who are struggling with things in their lives. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what comics can do for a motherfucker, okay? That's what it did for me. So that's Calvin and Hobbes. He's also just a master draftsman, a master of character, a master of wit and writing. I highly, highly recommend that you read Calvin and Hobbes. Just do it. Even if you don't like comics, just do it. It's a great time. And when you start reading Calvin and Hobbes, please tell me in the comments which are your favorite strips. Just put your favorite quotes because it's endlessly quotable. In the comic that I write, I even put chocolate frosted sugar bombs because that is the cereal that Calvin eats. So it's the cereal that my characters eat too. I love Watterson. It's where I learned to draw everything that I know how to draw. I'll stop talking about it now. That's my favorite strip of all time. Except for, it might be tied with this very last one, which I'm going to talk to you about now. It's Peanuts. Look, Peanuts, when it was in the Sunday comics, the reason I didn't mention it as one of my favorites, along with Hagar the Horrible and Beetle Bailey and Family Circus, is because it wasn't one of my favorites. Because I didn't like Peanuts in the 90s. I didn't like Peanuts in the 80s. The only time that I actually started liking the comic strip Peanuts was when I found out that there had been an era where he drew it completely differently. And all of the characters were younger. And Charlie Brown, instead of being like this sad da-na-na-na-na character type of thing, was like the babysitter, the block babysitter for all of these little kids that he had to deal with. And he had anxiety, he had neuroses, and all of the kids kind of laughed at him because they were babies. Oh my God. It's so funny. It's so well drawn. The characters are so appealing. I'm going to put up an example of Peanuts when I liked it versus my art, and you will see that I kind of just copied it. I'm extremely highly influenced by this era of Peanuts. To me, it's the ultimate appeal, the most appealing drawings ever made. This is the year 1950. And how I really found out about this was I went to a Barnes and Noble and there was a book there on sale for $20 that was the Peanuts collector edition entire, what is it called? It's called like the Peanuts collector edition 1950, from the year 1950. And on it, there's a picture of Charlie Brown crying. And the drawings in it are incredible. And the thing that I liked most about it is that there were whole strips. Back when they used to draw them on Bristol board and they used to be big, which I didn't know that they did. And then they sized them down. They would show the edges where there were notes and it was signed. And there were like little coloring notes to the editor and stuff like that, which I'd never seen before. So in this book, they really showed the process of making the art. They showed Schultz's earlier comics, Lil Folks, and when he drew teenagers, which first I'll plug an Instagram artist called Connor B, I think is how it's pronounced, who does strips about Charlie Brown as teenagers in the Schultz style from Lil Folks when he was drawing teenagers. That shit is brilliant. I'm obsessed. There's a whole section at the beginning for when Schultz used to be called Sparky, is what people used to call him. And he was just drawing all through school. He went to the army and he was drawing all through the war. I highly related to this Schultz. And most affecting of all, there was a photograph of when Schultz passed. Rest in peace to a genius. When he passed, somebody came in and took a photograph of his desk, his working area. And in it There were nibs that were still covered in ink. There was a box of nibs that was canceled from Japan that you can't even get anymore. So he just ordered back-ended boxes of them because they were his favorite ones. There were brushes, ink stained everything. There was a cloth to mop things up, and it was messy and it was beautiful. He had a T-square. It's just a big wooden desk with band-aids, even a Snoopy band-aid. And that was another pivotal moment for me in my life as an artist, and especially as a comic book artist, just seeing the desk of somebody who had devoted their life to the craft. And from that moment on, I was like, that's it. I'm never going to do anything else. How could I ever do anything else after I saw that? And this has been my dream since I was 4 years old. That's it. It was over for me. I went to school. I went to CalArts to do film, to do animation. And I went through all the motions. I gave it my very, very best shot, trying to be a director, showrunner, something like that. And who knows, maybe those things are not out of the question for me. But there's one thing that I've loved my whole life. One thing that's been consistent for me the whole way through. And it's this. It's just this. So when I said at the beginning, art books that got me where I am today, those are the 4 art books that got me where I am today. And by where I am today, I mean here, a comic artist making a living off of their art for the first time ever. I could have brought up Visual Story by Bruce Banner. Visual Story by, I can't remember his name. I could have brought up Visual Story. I could have brought up Save the Cat. Could have brought up Story by Robert McKee. Could have brought up Framed Ink. Could have brought up the Citizen Kane book, which I have. There are hundreds of books that I've read. Making Comics by Scott McCloud. That one actually was a big one for me. But there were hundreds of books that I read to improve my art, to become a better artist. And I'll put those in the bibliography too. And we'll talk about those another day. But you want to talk about art books that got me where I am today? I read Visual Story, Framed Ink. I read those books once. I took notes. But this, the 10th anniversary book, I read this until the pages fell out, dude. That's where I learned everything. That's where I really became an artist. That's where I actually learned. Through looking and loving, being inspired by, and desperately wanting to be as good as Watterson. As good as Schultz, whoever makes the Archie comics. My favorite was Dan DeCarlo. He was my favorite because he drew a Betty that I will argue to this day is queer. I think Betty's trans. His Betty from the 1950s. And all the people who drew the Sunday comics. Wanting to be exactly like them is what got me where I am today. Way more than any of the art books that I actually bought and practiced with. So, when I said I hope this video will help you, I mean for all of you artists who are watching this, what are the things that bring you joy? What are the art books that you go back to time and time and time again? Where did you spend your time as a child? And it might not be a book. For me it is because it was comics. What movies do you watch again and again? Do you love Howl's Moving Castle? Do you love Paprika? What do you like? What is it? Moomin? What are the things that bring you joy? Follow those. Follow those. Because in following those, you will discover who you really are. And I really want that for you. I really want that for you. Because it feels really good to have achieved my dream that I've had since I was 4 years old. And I'm really hoping that I can take it further. That's what I want. I'm happy, y'all. I just love comics. So if you had a good time watching this video, I had a great time making this video. I could talk comics all day. But if you had a good time watching this video, let me know and we'll do more. Because I don't really get to talk comics that much because the industry that I picked ended up being a film industry, an animation industry. So you want to talk Schultz, you want to talk Watterson, I'll talk shop with you all day. I did not read superhero comics. Like I said, I wasn't allowed to read superhero comics because my dad thought it would turn me gay. Joke's on him. I'm gay anyways. Okay, I think that's it for me today. I really, really want you to be happy though. So please, whatever made you happiest when you were 4, 6, 11, 14, please just go visit it again this week. Take some time. Read your old books that the pages are falling out of. Just go do something fun. You deserve it. You deserve it. Okay? Okay. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching this one. I had a great time. Let me know what your favorite Calvin and Hobbes quotes are. Let me know what your favorite comics are. And talk to me in the comments and we'll talk comics, my favorite thing in the whole world. Okay? Okay. Got it? Got it. I wish you the best. Have a great week. Bye.